Hi, I'm Chris and I'm a solicitor in the Medical Negligence Department at Bolt Burdon Kemp, and I'm going to give you some advice today about the complaints process and how to get the most out of it. Firstly, think about who the best person or the best body to direct the complaint to is. Now, there are a number of options, but there are resources out there to help you make that decision. For example, the Patients Association Making a Complaint leaflet. You may want to make a complaint or write to the healthcare provider in a more informal way at first, perhaps raising it as a letter of concerns. Either way, you have the option to direct a letter to either the healthcare provider themselves, so the GP practice, the hospital, the dentist, or if you're not comfortable doing that, or you feel the relationship's broken down, you can write to the body that oversees or regulates the provider, for example, NHS England or the Care Quality Commission. Secondly, think carefully about the important questions that you would like to ask. This is the best forum to ask these questions, and it's important that you spend the time to do that. If there are more than one party interested in the outcome of the complaint, for example the wider family, it might be helpful to sit down with everyone and come up with a list of questions together before providing it in one go. If you're thinking about making a medical negligence claim in addition, it may not answer all of the questions that you and the family have, so you will probably be better served directing those questions and asking for those concerns to be addressed at the complaint stage. Now, it's very hard to do this. My third piece of advice will be to try to take the emotion out of the writing. Now, you may well be very entitled to be angry and upset about what's happened, but it's unlikely to help your cause. My advice will be try to stick to the facts, ask the questions, and raise the concerns that you have. Try to remember that you're trying to gain empathy from the reader of the letter, and you're unlikely to do that by directing anger towards them, even if that's completely justified. Fourthly, if you're also thinking about bringing a medical negligence claim, I often get asked this question. People are worried about saying the wrong thing. My advice is always the same. Try not to worry about it, because the complaints process and bringing a civil claim are two very separate things. It will be unusual for anything said in a letter or in a complaints meeting to later undermine a claim. I would try to get the most out of this process that you can. And finally, some general practical tips on how best to set out the letter. I would say that in any piece of writing, the aim is to try and convey the information that you want, or persuade the person. If you're trying to persuade them of something, help them get to that point as quickly and easily as possible. There are a number of ways you can do that. I would say in this context, firstly, set out the date of the incident at the outset and the departments that has happened. Use headings to separate out the sections of the complaint, and bullet points or numbered points to make your points within those. It will be easier for the reader to take on board that information. Try to keep only the most important bits in the letter and ask the most important questions. There will be a huge amount, I'm sure, that you'll want to say in any letter, but try not to let it take away from the most important points you want to make and the important questions that you want to ask. Think, does the reader need to hear this in order to get what I want from them? I would also suggest making your best point first and asking your most important question first. It's tempting to set it out like a story and leave the big conclusion to the end, but my advice would be to put it at the start when the reader is most engaged. Also, take some time before you write the letter and whilst you're writing it to think about the outcomes that you want and state that clearly. That might be an explanation of why something did or didn't happen, an apology, or some reassurance that this is not going to happen again. And finally, I would say, let the letter go cold for a few days and then come back to it. It's amazing what a fresh pair of eyes can do. I do that in my work myself, and I find it's really helpful to spot things that I've missed or parts that I can remove that aren't relevant. So that concludes my advice on the complaints process. I'm sorry that you've got reason to watch this video, but I hope that it's been of some help.